It's pretty crazy how much the whole way we find out about stuff and buy things keeps changing, right?
Yeah.
Like, just when you think you've got it figured out, bam, everything's different. And I think that's what's so cool about what we're diving into today, this whole new way of doing business.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pretty big shift. And I think the book you sent over by Lemang does a really good job of getting into the nitty-gritty of it. This
Yep.
whole thing about the, what's it called, the red person economy. Right.
Exactly. So in our deep dive today, we're going to really try to get a good handle on this red person economy. What exactly does it mean? Why has it become such a big deal? And we'll try to pull out the most important things from the book excerpts you were kind enough to send over. It's like, think of this as your crash course, to get up to speed on this big change in how we buy and sell things. And the book excerpts are going to be our roadmap. Our mission is to really figure out the most important things about this whole new economic force. So are you ready to get started?
I am, yeah. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. So first things first, what exactly is this red person economy?
Okay, so basically the red person economy they describe it as like a brand new way of doing business. And it comes from like two things kind of coming together. There's the fan economy, which is, people being really into certain personalities and stuff. And then there's the experience economy, where it's all about the whole journey the customer goes on. And all of this is happening in the world of the internet, which makes it super interesting.
Okay, yeah, I get that. So the internet's a big part of this.
Huge, yeah. And the growth of this whole thing has been crazy fast, especially in China. Think about it. Back in 2019, they estimated the market size to be something like over 3.5 trillion RMB. And they think that by 2023, it's going to be more than 6 trillion RMB.
Whoa, trillions of RMB in just a few years. That's insane. Okay, so who are these red people that are at the center of it all?
So red people, that's like a term, In Chinese, it's Wu. And it basically means anybody who's got a lot of influence online, people with big fan bases. We're talking about everyone from, like your regular celebrities to those key opinion leaders, the KOLs. And then there's a bunch of other online personalities too. They're basically like the connection between the brands, the platforms they use, and then of course the people who actually buy stuff, the consumers.
Okay, I see. So it sounds like they're doing a lot more than just saying, hey, buy this product, like a normal celebrity endorsement.
Exactly. They're not just tools for marketing anymore. They're actually becoming a new part of how the economy works. Their influence, it's powerful. They can shape how people behave as consumers, even set trends. And they're changing the way supply chains work, the traditional ways.
That's interesting. So how are they shaking things up in terms of how we buy things and how companies get our attention?
Well, one big change is that they can actually guide what consumers do and what becomes popular, what's trendy. Normal marketing, it usually focuses on all the stuff about a product, the features, but it doesn't always connect with people on an emotional level. But red people, they've built these real relationships with their audiences so they can tap into those feelings and make things feel more personal.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like instead of just seeing a product in some ad, you're getting a recommendation from someone you actually trust or whose life you think is cool, someone you follow.
That's it. And because of that, we're seeing this idea of content as the shelf. Basically, the way red people constantly talk to their fans, that actually adds a lot of information about the product. It's so much more than just a one-way advertisement. It's like an ongoing conversation.
Right, right. And, in the excerpts, they talk about relationship-based consumption in China. What's that all about?
Right. Oh, yeah, relationship-based consumption. It's like a big deal in China now. People don't just buy stuff to show off or anything. They want to connect with others and be part of communities with shared interests, even communities built around what they buy and use. And red people and their fan bases, they often end up forming those communities.
I see. So it's not just about a company telling you what to buy. It's more about finding your tribe, the people who like the same things you do. And the red person can help you find them.
You got it. And this is totally different from how brands used to do things, that old school top-down approach. They used to blast their message through TV and stuff, but the internet has changed all that. Now with red people as these hubs on different platforms, it's way more open. Brands can reach people directly in their own communities, that's what they call private traffic, and be part of the conversation, have a back and forth.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And technology's got to be a big part of making all this work, right? Stuff like big data and cloud computing.
Oh, absolutely. Big data and cloud computing are essential. They allow for way more targeted marketing through red people because often a brand's image and the red person's online persona, they kind of match up. So it's much more likely that their fans will become loyal customers. And that's gold for brands.
So it's this whole connected system that's really interesting.
Totally. It's like a closed loop. Brands give products to red people, they show them off to their fans, people buy stuff, and then the brands get feedback to make even better products. And you know what's really cool? Fans can tell the red person what they think about the products, and that information goes right back to the brand. It makes the whole supply chain so much faster and more efficient.
Wow, that's a powerful system. But, the book preface also talked about some challenges.
Yeah.
What are some of the hurdles the red person economy is facing?
Yeah, there are definitely some growing pains. Like, they talk about how red people themselves need more professional training and development. Then there's the whole thing about figuring out the relationships between red people, the platforms, and the brands. It can get complicated. And converting all that attention into actual sales, they call it commercial traffic, that's a big one. Plus, making sure the product information is accurate and having ways to handle consumer complaints, those are all important too.
Yeah, it sounds like they need to work out some kinks for this whole thing to really work in the long run.
Definitely. The author really stresses that they need strong technology to keep things running smoothly. They need better standards and ways of doing things across the industry. And they need solid laws to make sure the red person economy can grow in a healthy way.
Okay, so we've got this red person economy with tons of potential, but also some stuff to figure out. Now, the excerpts also talk about something called a broadcasting brands era. What does that mean?
So it's like this trend that's picking up speed fast. Basically, almost every brand that sells to consumers, they're all getting into live streaming now. It's becoming a core part of their strategy. And in this new world, KOLs, those key opinion leaders, they're becoming a crucial part of doing business.
So if a brand wants to stay relevant, they pretty much have to be thinking about live streaming and working with KOLs. It's not really optional anymore.
Pretty much, yeah. And KOLs, they're the ones who can take all that traffic, all that attention people are giving online and turn it into actual customers. They do it by talking to their audiences directly and engaging with them.
Right. And these KOLs, they're not just on one platform, right? They're all over the place.
You got it. You'll find them making content on Bilibili, they're influencers on Weibo, they're doing live streams on all sorts of e-commerce and social media platforms. And it's really cool how they do it. They talk to their audiences, they work brands into their conversations naturally. And get this, they even influence what companies make. They give feedback on products and help companies improve things faster.
So they have a lot of power in shaping what gets made and what people buy. It's not just about advertising anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And the excerpts also talk about how, when KOLs start talking about a product before it's even released, they call it planting the grass. It can lead to massive sales when it actually launches. They build up all this excitement and buzz.
That makes sense. It's all about creating that anticipation. Now, for all this red person economy stuff to work, there's got to be a lot going on behind the scenes, right? What about the infrastructure that supports all of this?
Oh, yeah. The book really emphasizes that. China has this amazing infrastructure, both physical and digital. Like, they've got high-speed rail and these huge highway networks that make logistics super efficient. Then there's the internet, which is everywhere and super fast with 4G and now 5G. And of course, there are the supply chains and the massive e-commerce platforms.
And the content platforms too, right? Like those short video apps and the ones where people recommend stuff.
For sure. Platforms like Douyin, you probably know it as TikTok outside of China, and Kuaishou, those are huge for short videos. And then there's Xiaohongshu, where people share all sorts of recommendations. The author actually says, we're in a golden age for this whole model. There's so much innovation happening, and it's only going to get bigger in the future.
Okay, so this isn't just some fad that's going to disappear. It's deeply ingrained and growing like crazy. And it's interesting how it's creating all these new brands. How are red people contributing to that?
Well, we're seeing the really successful live streamers becoming brands themselves. They're what they call channel brands, and they're selling a ton of stuff every year. But maybe even more importantly, they're changing how traditional brands think about things. They're putting the focus on people, goods, and place. So the people are the audience and the traffic. The goods are the products, and the place is like the whole scenario where people are buying and experiencing stuff.
That's a really different way of looking at it. It's not just about the product itself, it's about the whole experience.
Totally. And this new way of thinking has led to the rise of all these online-only brands, like Perfect Diary for makeup, Genki Forest for drinks, and Florasis, they do makeup too. A lot of these brands are offering good prices and good quality.
And the place part, the scenario, how are red people changing that in online shopping?
It's pretty cool. They're creating these new scenarios that kind of bridge the gap between shopping in a real store and shopping online. Like they'll do live demos of products and create a really fun atmosphere, almost like an auction sometimes. It makes online shopping feel more immediate and exciting.
Yeah, it's like taking the best parts of both worlds. And the fact that China has such a solid infrastructure, that really helps these new brands take off, right?
For sure. The author actually thinks the next 5 to 10 years are going to be huge for these new brands. He calls it a golden time, like a Ager, which means like a scorching hot summer. That's how good it's going to be. And a big reason is because China has this massive population of consumers, these really strong supply chains, and these amazing communication platforms, all boosted by the power of red people.
So we're seeing a huge shift in power, aren't we? The excerpts even talk about a power transfer. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's a really important point. The book says that individual red people are basically becoming businesses and brands themselves, and they could even end up being more influential than traditional companies and platforms.
Oh, that's a big claim. Do they give any examples of how powerful these individuals can be?
They do. They talk about like Via and Lijiaki, these top live streamers. They say they can sell as much stuff in a single day as the entire industrial robot industry in China sells in a year. It's kind of mind-blowing.
That's crazy. One person's daily sales matching an entire industry's yearly sales. That really shows how much things are changing.
For real. And these red people, with all the influence, they get this momentum going. They attract resources. They become the big players in their areas. The book even says that we're moving into a time where the individual is greater than the company, and the individual dominates the industry. It's like these red person live streamers are the best way to get to customers now, and they're actually making traditional businesses stronger in a whole new way.
So the whole traditional hierarchy is getting flipped on its head. And they mentioned this S2B to C model. Where does that fit in?
Oh yeah, S2B2C. That stands for Supply Platform to Business to Consumer. It's basically a way to help businesses by making supply chains more efficient. But the book says that the human element is still super important, especially the red people. They bring that personal touch that's often missing in these big, complicated systems.
So technology provides the backbone for efficiency, but it's the red person who makes it feel human and builds that trust.
Exactly. And another thing, the audience a red person has, that's their own traffic, their own connection with their followers. It doesn't depend on the whims of some platform's algorithm. That gives them a lot of power and independence.
That's a great point. And, the excerpts actually suggest that if you're starting a new business now, it's almost essential to start as a red person. Why do they say that?
Well, think about it. If you're a brand new business trying to get noticed through normal advertising, it's tough. Big companies have tons of money to spend, so it's really hard to stand out. But if you start by building your own personal brand as a red person, you're basically creating your own direct connection with an audience that would be almost impossible to reach otherwise.
So by becoming a red person and building a following, you're creating your own channel, your own audience that you control.
Exactly. And the book really stresses how important it is to have those social resources, especially for entrepreneurs. Your audience, your control over that audience, your resources, they're all tied to your personal brand and how much influence you have online.
It's like your network and the trust you've built become your most valuable asset. Now, I'm curious about how this whole red person economy started. The excerpts talk about its genesis. What were the early signs that something new was happening?
Okay, so back in 2013, the people at Taobao who are always looking for new trends, they noticed something strange. They saw these online stores that were selling a ton of stuff, but they weren't doing any of the usual things. They weren't using Taobao's promotions or anything, but their sales were going through the roof, especially during big shopping events like 6.18 and Double 11.
So they were like these rogue stores, breaking all the rules but still succeeding. What was going on?
Well, Taobao dug into the data and figured out that these were what they called red person e-commerce brands. These were stores connected to people like Cheryl, Lijiaki, Via, Liziki, these big influencers. And the reason they were selling so much was because they were super engaged with their fans online.
So there was a big change happening in how people were deciding what to buy. It wasn't just about the brand anymore.
Right. It was like a shift in consumer behavior, especially among younger people born after 1990. They were buying things based on who was recommending them, the red people, more than the brand itself. So brands had to change too. They had to become more like real people, more relatable and trustworthy by working with these influencers.
So the connection with the red person became the most important thing, even more than brand loyalty sometimes.
That's it. And those live streamers, they became a huge force in getting young people to buy stuff. It's because they could show products in a fun, engaging way and make the whole experience feel more personal and real.
I get it. Now, what were the big overall factors that really made this red person economy explode?
So around late 2014, these red people started becoming super important in driving traffic online. And the book talks about something called the wind tunnel theory of internet opportunities. Like every so often, there's a new wind tunnel, a new area where there's a ton of opportunity for growth. And the emergence of red people was one of those moments. They compare it to other wind tunnels, like the rise of Taobao in 2008, WeChat marketing getting big in 2013, and then around 2015, everyone started focusing on building personal brands online, and that's when people like Papi Jiang started getting famous.
So it's like a pattern, right? New opportunities popping up as the internet evolves.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just happening in China, was it?
Nope, it was happening globally.
Yeah.
They even talk about Donald Trump in the book. They say he used social media really well to connect directly with his supporters during the 2016 election, kind of like a red person.
Wow, that's an interesting comparison. So how did this whole red person thing play out differently in the West compared to China?
Well, in Western countries, it was more like traditional advertising and celebrity endorsements just moving online. But in China, the red person live streamers, they actually became a new way to sell stuff, like a whole new kind of store. And between 2018 and 2020, live streaming e-commerce just exploded in China. There was so much competition, and the top streamers were selling crazy amounts of stuff.
So it was a wild time, a lot of change happening really fast. And the e-commerce platforms, they played a part in this too, right?
Big time. Platforms like Taobao, they saw what was happening, and they invested heavily in the top streamers like Via and Lijiaki. They knew that if they could get those big names on board, it would attract more businesses to start doing live streaming too. It was a smart strategy, kind of like how they used Double 11 to get more brands onto Tmall.
Right, so these top streamers became super valuable to the platforms. And it wasn't just the big companies getting involved, was it?
Not at all. A lot of small and medium-sized businesses, those SMEs, they jumped on board too. We even saw CEOs doing live streams and companies creating their own influencer teams.
So in a way, it kind of leveled the playing field. What types of products were selling best in this new world?
So far, it's been mostly those fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, things that cost around 80-100 RMB. It's probably because people are still hesitant to buy really expensive stuff online without seeing it in person, like cars or houses. But the author thinks VR and AR, virtual and augmented reality, could change that in the future.
Yeah, if those technologies get good enough, maybe we'll all be buying houses in the metaverse. And what was happening in society that really made this whole red person e-commerce thing take off like it did?
Well, the big thing was how people were spending their time online. Short-form video platforms like Douyin and Kuaishou just exploded in popularity. They're really good at grabbing your attention even when you only have a few minutes. And in that kind of environment, any type of content can become a way to sell stuff, even funny videos or memes.
It's like entertainment and shopping are becoming the same thing. They even call this huge popularity of red person live streaming a black swan event. Why do they say that?
They call it a black swan because it was this big, unexpected thing that had a huge impact. It's kind of like what happened during the SARS outbreak in 2003. People couldn't go out, so they started shopping online more, and that gave a huge boost to e-commerce advertising. And this live streaming boom in early 2020, it was similar. It happened so fast, and while it created a lot of opportunities, it also caused some chaos. People weren't sure what to make of it, and some consumers were maybe a little too impulsive.
So it was a big disruption. But the author also talks about who benefits from this new world.
Yeah, and this is important. They say the red person economy can benefit everyone, big companies, startups, even small businesses. It's not like some of those old internet models where only the biggest players win. In fact, smaller companies might even have an advantage because they can adapt faster. But no matter how big or small you are, the key is to understand how this new economy works. You got to know how to build relationships with your audience and create a community.
That's good news for the little guys. So why has this red person economy become such a big deal in China specifically?
One of the biggest reasons is that almost everyone in China is building up their social assets now. They're creating content, building their online presence. The author says that red people are making like 60–70% of the content on the big social platforms. That's a lot of content. And they say there's a ton of untapped potential there, a lot of value that hasn't been unlocked yet.
It's like everyone's becoming a mini influencer in their own way.
Yeah.
And the value of these platforms really depends on the people making that content, right?
Exactly. They talk about a book called Linked by Albert Laszlo Barabasi, and it basically says that the more red people a platform has, the more valuable it is. If a platform just throws content at you without any real community or interaction, it's not really a social platform.
Right.
And they say the reason some of these social media platforms are worth so much money is because they have all these red people on them, the live streamers and all the people creating content. That's like the content industry itself is being undervalued right now.
So it's the creators who are the real stars. And how have these red people evolved over time?
The book breaks it down into 4 stages. Stage 1.0 was all about getting famous through traditional media, but that wasn't very sustainable because you weren't really creating your own content. Then came stage 2.0, where platforms like YouTube started recommending certain videos, and that's how some people got famous. Stage 3.0 was all about sharing your life on social media like Weibo and then selling stuff through your own online store. That was a slower way to build a following, but it was more focused. And now we're in stage 4.0, where it's all about high-quality content, using short videos and live streaming, being on multiple platforms, and really understanding what your fans want.
So it's become more about creating good content and connecting with your audience. And the author thinks it's not too late for people to become successful KOLs or content creators now.
Yeah, totally. They say the platforms are so valuable because of the creators, and those creators are going to have more and more ways to make money in the future, like selling products, getting ad revenue, and even offering paid subscriptions. The people who can get and keep people's attention, they're the ones who are going to win in the long run. And brands are realizing that they need to communicate with consumers through these red people, not just through the platforms themselves.
It's a real power shift. And that story about the shoe seller, that was a great example of this new world.
Oh yeah, that story was perfect. This person was selling shoes on Weibo and Douyin, and they didn't have a ton of followers, but they knew how to use social media and work with other influencers, and they managed to build a really successful business. It shows that you don't need a ton of money or resources to make it work if you understand how to use social media.
So the key to success in social commerce is finding a way to leverage these new platforms and work with red person influencers. Now, there's this thing called the structural jigsaw of the red person economy. What's that all about?
So, the structural jigsaw is basically 4 main pieces that fit together. You've got the red person who creates content. That content attracts fans. Those fans give the red person traffic, which is basically attention, and then that traffic turns into sales.
Okay, so it sounds simple, but it's actually very different from how things used to work.
Exactly. Back in the day, you got traffic from search engines and big websites. But now, the red people are the traffic source. They're the ones bringing the audience. That's why it costs so much to advertise on those big red person accounts on Weibo and WeChat.
And that explains why bloggers from way back didn't make as much money.
Right. You could have a great blog, but if it wasn't showing up on search engines, nobody would see it. So all the advertising money went to the search engines, not the people making the content. But now, people follow red people directly, and their content spreads through social media, so it's much more direct.
And the red people, they have way more ways to make money now, don't they?
Oh yeah, tons of ways. They can sell stuff directly, do sponsored content, get donations on live streams, offer paid subscriptions, do performances, endorsements, even teaching and training. Most of the money still comes from e-commerce and advertising, but the possibilities are way more diverse now.
So it's not just about putting ads on a website anymore. It's a whole new world. And this red person economy, it's really shaking things up for traditional e-commerce and marketing, isn't it?
Big time. It's like a whole new model.
Right.
The book gives this example of Zara, the big fast fashion company. They're actually selling less of some of their products online than some of the top red people are selling on platforms like Weibo. It's crazy how much power those red people have now.
Wow, that's a huge change. And this isn't just happening in China, is it?
Nope, it's global. Even luxury brands in the West are starting to work with influencers. The top fashion influencers can make millions of dollars just from posting on social media. That's money that used to go to magazines and stuff.
That's where all the attention is going now. And what makes these red people so effective?
Well, they have a different kind of influence than celebrities. They're more real, more relatable. They don't have that whole manufactured image. They talk to their fans directly, so there's a lot of trust there.
So we've learned a lot about the red person economy. It's huge, it's changing fast, and it's not just about influencers selling stuff. It's about power shifting, the importance of content and community, and a whole new way of thinking about business. For our listeners, I hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about and some new ideas to help you navigate this new world.
And as we wrap up, here's something to ponder. We've talked a lot about how important authenticity, community, and engagement are in this red person economy. But what if those principles start to influence other areas of our lives too? What about education or social movements or even how we think about personal growth? Could we see those areas changing in the same way commerce is changing? That's something to really think about.
That's a great point. It's definitely something to consider as this whole red person economy continues to evolve.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening.